Welcome back, everybody. This is Modern with Randy. I am Randy, and today I'm talking about a deck that just seems not to go away. It seems to never kind of die. Of course, that is Living End. And with the NRG series showdowns, right, that just happened, the 10K showdown they just had last weekend, I figured I'd talk about this deck since it is the one that took first place. It took the whole thing down. Living End, as most of you probably know, from either playing against it, playing with it, thinking it had died when we had the banning of the last Cascade card. Rest in peace, my little kitties. Violent Outburst. A lot of people thought this deck was going to immediately die off. Living End was going to be dead because Violent Outburst was kind of the card that was holding that deck together. Turns out though that Ardent Plea just makes it work. Turns out we can just slide in Ardent Pleas and the deck is still great. Who knew? But kind of surprising, I think, that this deck took down the entire tournament. I know with Red Black Evoke or Red Black Scam, whatever you want to call it, usually has been kind of like popping up in the metagame or doing well in the metagame as a whole. And with their main deck, Graveyard Hate, with the Dauthi Voidwalker, this has kind of been a problem for this deck, and kind of what, in my opinion, what has always kept Living End down is Dauthi Voidwalker being a creature essentially existing in the format. But not that much scam. Turns out that this deck is going to thrive and shine. So here we go. Just going to do a quick breakdown of this deck, just so in case anyone who's unfamiliar with it, anybody who doesn't know anything about it. So we were running a total of 16 lands. Also notably, we're running the full 3 Surveil lands. We have the 1 Hex Mage, we have the 1 Meticulous Archive, and the Lust Portico. So basically, we're playing a Bant mana base. Pay no mind to our black cards in our deck. But we're basically playing a Bant game plan here, or Bant colors is what basically everything we're trying to cast. We do have 1 Sunken Ruins here in the main, just as a nod that we might want to cast Grief maybe once every 20 games. But outside of that, it is running pretty much. It skips as much as it can on lands, thanks to generous at being able to forest cycle, which basically gets all of our colors. Lets us get any kind of color combination we need, just depending on the situation. And then so we have our 8 Cascade spells. We have the 4 Ardent Plea, which is the enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks alone, it gives Exalted and then Cascade, which really all this says is 3 mana Cascade. Same thing with Shardless Agent, except that it's a 2/2 body. We all know what this card does. It's been in the format since MH2, and it's just been doing amazing things. Everyone knows about this card. Everyone's happy about. Well, people aren't happy about this card. I'm happy about this card because I like Cascade. But then we have our interaction package. So we're playing the full 4 Subtlety. Basically, it's a great way to answer any problematic creatures or planeswalkers like the fairy, things like that. Plus, we're going to get it back thanks to Living End. We're playing Grief because it's a good card. I don't need to sit here and explain to you people why Grief is a good card. And then, of course, we're playing Force Negation to be able to answer problematic things our opponent might be doing on their turn. Or, if we get super late in the game and somehow we have 6 lands out, we can, Cascade and then hard cast Force of Negation if we need to. Not to mention, it's just a great way to answer, Chalices, answering Teferis, things like that, or just stopping our opponent from winning on their turn and then, cascading on our turn. We're also playing, playing Zenderset. We're playing Street Wraith as another good cycler, along to be able to pitch with Grief. Same thing with the Architect of Wills, is just a good cycler and pitches a Grief. And I'm pretty sure that's why they were playing the Fairy Macabre as well. I think it's just an extra card to add to the black count. It also lets you hit, you can discard it and exile 2 cards from a graveyard, so being able to, Subtlety, or being able to Grief, and you had to take like a creature, especially the biggest common thing I can think of is like Griefing on turn 1. We take, somebody's like Prime Time or something like that, and then we can Fairy Macabre, eat their Prime Time, Cascade, make sure they're not getting any value back, things like that. Or there's multiple ways to put creatures into the graveyard from Surveil lands, things like that. Just an extra card that can come up and can be good. But I think this is more of a consensus of we need more black cards for Grief. And then, of course, we're playing Cure of Mysteries and Waker of Ways as our other 2 cycle cards, essentially, to put into play off of our Living End. And then we're playing the full 4 Living Ends. which I think is a little different. I think most Living End lists have usually been on 3, but I think since we don't have the instant speed cascade anymore, I think having 4 might just be the correct answer, and it's never a bad card to pitch the Grief. I mean, you never want to draw Living End, but at least you have the Griefs that you can pitch them to, so it's not just kind of always, sitting rotting in your hand. But overall, this is the deck list. Nothing major has really changed with this deck, besides, obviously, we have 4 Iron Fleet instead of Violent Outburst. But I do think that Living End is still a very good deck. I think if you guys are going to be playing in any tournaments this weekend or anything like that, you guys can probably expect to see an uptick of Cascade decks or either a downtick of Cascade, since it just did well last weekend. So it's either going to be everywhere or be nowhere. It's kind of one of those things where people are either going to be smart enough to recognize that, hey, Living End just did well, people are going to be packing sideboard card, they're going to be packing hate, I should not be playing this deck, or they're going to be like, Living End just won, man, this deck is super cheap, I'm going to jam it, because I mean, all in all, this deck is relatively cheap for a modern deck. Most of your spells don't cost anything. Living Ends are super cheap. I mean, Force Negations, Griefs, and Subtleties are going to be your main money in this entire deck. But I mean, turns out the free spells are cost money. Who knew? Almost like they're good. But I do think this is probably a great deck to take in a week or two to one of your tournaments for Modern. Just because people are going to be less likely prepared for it. But of course, we have our great little sideboard here. So we can pretty much break this down into like almost 4 different categories. We have the first category, which is we don't want them to get stuff back. We have the Endurances, and we have Leyline of the Void, basically to stop our opponent from getting any value off of our Living Ends, and so we're getting all the value for our side. We then have the I need to stop their anti-hate, with Force of Vigor to be able to destroy artifact or enchantments, and same thing with Foundation Breaker, being able to convoke it or pitch with Force of Vigor. Not too much to explain here. And then we have the I need to counter what they're doing / I need to counter them countering my stuff. So we have 2 Mystical Disputes, we have 1 Commandeer, and we have 2 Teferi Time Ravelers here for like the mirror matches or for like the control matchups, whatever you want to call it. And then we have Dampening Matrix, which is kind of a new one being played in the sideboards nowadays, or at least it's new in relative terms to when it was arguing whether Rhinos or Living End was the best Cascade deck back there. So Dampening Matrix is activated abilities of artifacts and creatures can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Turned off like Dothy Woodwalker, turned off all of Yawgmoth, things like that. Just kind of a way to shut down decks that you don't necessarily want to play against or that you don't want to have to deal with, because Yawgmoth is kind of a bad matchup for this deck as a whole. Mainly just because they can fill up their graveyard really well. As the game goes long, like it's no longer just like, hey, game went long, I have 12 creatures in my graveyard. It's like, that's cool, I have like 7 creatures in my graveyard and they all help me win the game. So you never really feel good about doing that. So just another card to bring in for bad matchups and such. But overall, I like the deck. I really like what May did with this deck. I think she had figured out what she needed to play, what she needed to do, and she managed to take down the whole 10K. So congrats on her. Congrats on taking a deck that I think might be a little underexplored as a whole, or just a little underplayed in the metagame as it stands right now. But as always, guys, this is as always, guys, I am Randy. Let me know what you guys are doing for your RCQs. Let me know what you guys are taking. And always, if you like what I'm doing, leave a like, leave a follow, leave a like, subscribe, all that fun jazz. I'll see you guys next time.